The power of silent dignity in moments of discrimination is one of the most misunderstood strengths a person can possess, because in a world where loudness is often mistaken for influence, quiet composure becomes a language only the wise know how to speak. When someone faces unfair treatment, especially the kind that pierces deeper because it's rooted in prejudice or assumptions, the instinct is often to react, to defend, to fight back with volume. But silent dignity works differently. It does not mean weakness, nor does it mean acceptance. It means choosing clarity over chaos, control over impulse, and purpose over ego. It is the ability to remain still while the world expects you to break. The black CEO in this story understood that better than anyone. He knew that the moments when others strip you of respect are the very moments that reveal your true strength, because while insults, dismissal, and wrongful judgment can touch the surface of a person, they can never reach the core unless they are allowed to. Silent dignity begins with that inner stability, the quiet understanding that your value is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you respond when they do. He sat there, removed from his seat, not because of a mistake in the system but because someone looked at him and decided he didn't belong. That kind of discrimination carries a sting that words struggle to explain. Yet instead of reacting with anger, he chose something far more powerful. He chose presence. He chose to let the moment reveal itself fully before he revealed his response. Silent dignity is not inactivity, it is strategic patience. It allows the truth to unfold without interruption. It shows the world that impulsive reactions may feel good in the moment, but intentional responses create change that lasts longer. When he stood there, watching others in the lounge glance at him, some with curiosity, some with discomfort, some pretending not to notice, he understood that he was standing at the intersection of two truths, how the world saw him, and how he saw himself. And that second truth was the only one that mattered. Silent dignity is the refusal to let someone else's ignorance shape your behavior. It is the awareness that even when someone disrespects you, you do not owe them your peace. You do not owe them your anger either. What you owe yourself is the right to respond from a place that aligns with your values, not your wounds. When the CEO chose to remain composed, he was not surrendering, he was observing. He was allowing the person who wronged him to reveal themselves completely. People often expose their character in the way they treat those they underestimate, and he understood this deeply. Silent dignity gives people enough space to show who they are without you having to say a word. It creates a mirror for them to see their own actions more clearly, and for others around to recognize the truth without you having to point it out. This form of dignity also protects your energy. Anger, while justified, can drain, distract, and derail. Controlled silence maintains your power exactly where it belongs, with you. It also forces the world around you to pay attention. Noise can be ignored, but stillness demands awareness. A person who stays calm in the middle of injustice stands out more than someone who explodes in frustration. People remember the ones who hold their ground without lowering their standards. People learn from the ones who refuse to adopt the behavior that was used against them. That's why silent dignity is not just a personal strength, it's a leadership trait. It shows others what strength looks like when it's not trying to prove itself. It teaches that there are battles won not by shouting, but by refusing to be moved. It shows that power is not about dominance, but about control of your emotions, your choices, your direction. In that airport lounge, the CEO's calm presence carried more weight than any argument he could have made. Others watched him, not because he demanded attention, but because his quiet posture spoke louder than confrontation ever could. Silent dignity creates space for consequences to unfold naturally. It allows the truth to rise without manipulation. It turns unfair treatment into a stage where character is tested, observed, and ultimately revealed. And in that moment, he understood that his silence was not empty, it was full of history, full of resilience, full of the unspoken message that he had nothing to prove to anyone who could not see his worth. Assumptions reveal character more than mistakes do, because a mistake can be an accident, a moment of confusion, a lapse in attention, something that happens without intention. But an assumption, especially the kind made about another person's worth, identity, or place in the world, comes from somewhere deeper. It comes from belief. It comes from perception. It comes from the internal lens through which someone views others. And when a person acts on that assumption without hesitation, it exposes not just what they think in that moment, but how they see people in general. The airport staff who looked at the black CEO and decided he didn't belong in the VIP seat didn't just make a procedural error. They revealed how they interpreted status, importance, and belonging based on appearance alone. They revealed their own hierarchy of who seems deserving and who seems out of place. And that is where character becomes visible, because character is not shown in carefully rehearsed actions or polite conversations. It appears in the unguarded decisions people make when they believe no one is watching or when they assume their judgment is the default truth. Assumptions are windows. They show you the inner framework of someone's thinking without them having to explain it. When the staff member approached the CEO, there was no question asked, no verification, no moment of doubt. There was confidence in the assumption that he wasn't the kind of person who sits in a premium seat. That confidence didn't come from rules or protocol, it came from bias disguised as certainty. And this is where the true difference between a mistake and an assumption becomes clear. A mistake says, I slipped. An assumption says, I believe this to be true. One is a moment, the other is a mindset. And mindsets have a way of shaping actions, interactions, and outcomes in ways that last far longer than a simple error ever could. The power of recognizing assumptions lies in the clarity they bring. They show who rushes to judge, who takes shortcuts in understanding, who operates from stereotypes, and who places people into categories without knowing their story. Assumptions are not just careless thoughts, they are reflections of values. Someone who assumes the worst in others reveals a heart condition to distrust. Someone who assumes superiority reveals an ego that seeks validation through comparison. Someone who assumes inferiority reveals an internal ranking system that assigns worth unevenly. And someone who assumes without asking shows a lack of humility, because humility pauses, wonders, questions, and considers. Assumptions skip all of that. They act first and understand later, if at all. The CEO understood something important as he watched the situation unfold. He realized that the staff member's behavior was not about him personally, it was about the biases the staff member carried into the moment. This distinction matters, because recognizing that an assumption speaks about the person who made it, not the person it targets, protects dignity. It prevents internalizing someone else's ignorance as a reflection of your own value. This is why the CEO didn't react emotionally. He didn't allow their assumption to become a definition of who he was. He saw their behavior for what it was, a display of character, not a measure of his worth. When people make assumptions, they reveal what they prioritize. Some prioritize appearances, some prioritize comfort, some prioritize familiarity. But those with strong character prioritize truth, fairness, accuracy, and respect. They choose to understand rather than assume. They choose to ask rather than judge. They choose to see people as individuals, not categories. This is why assumptions are so revealing. They show whether someone cares more about being right or being fair, more about protecting their worldview or expanding it, more about convenience or compassion. The staff member chose convenience wrapped in confidence, and that choice exposed the core of their thinking far more than any apology later could repair. Assumptions also reveal how someone behaves with perceived power. When a person feels they have authority, or even the illusion of authority, they often act with their truest impulses. The staff member believed they held the authority to decide who belonged where, and in that moment, their instinct wasn't to help, clarify, or verify. It was to assert control based on a visual judgment. That impulse came from a place of bias, and the CEO saw it clearly. People who use perceived power to diminish others always reveal something deeper about themselves, insecurity, prejudice, or an inflated sense of importance. Meanwhile, those who use power to serve, assist, and uplift reveal generosity and integrity. What makes assumptions so dangerous is also what makes them so revealing. They are fast. They are unfiltered. They bypass logic and land directly in action. They leave no room for correction before the damage is done. But they also leave a trail of truth behind them, a truth about the character of the person who made the assumption. And once that truth is visible, it shapes how others see them, trust them, and respond to them moving forward. The CEO didn't need to defend himself because the assumption already did the work of exposing the staff member's mindset. He simply allowed the moment to speak for itself. He understood that assumptions carry consequences, not just for the person they target, but for the person who made them, because character once revealed cannot be unseen. Turning disrespect into an opportunity for transformation requires a level of emotional intelligence that many people never develop, because most people meet disrespect with immediate reaction, anger, frustration, or a desire to strike back. But those who understand the deeper mechanics of human behavior know that disrespect is more than an insult. It is information. It reveals what someone believes, how they think, how they treat others when they feel unseen or unchallenged. And in that revelation lies an opening, a chance to shift the situation, the environment, or even the people involved. The black CEO in this story recognized something profound in the moment he was removed from his VIP seat. He realized he was being handed a choice. Not a choice about whether the disrespect hurt, because it did, but a choice about what to do with that hurt. Whether to let it spark anger or let it spark awareness. Whether to shrink under it or rise above it. Whether to respond impulsively or purposefully. Transformation begins there, in the split second when emotion meets intention. People often think transformation is loud, dramatic, or confrontational, but true transformation is often quiet. It happens in the mind before it happens in the world. It starts with how you interpret the moment. The CEO could have seen the disrespect as a personal attack and reacted accordingly. He could have raised his voice, demanded compliance, or caused a scene that would only reinforce stereotypes and escalate tensions. But he chose a different path. He chose to let the moment breathe. He chose to observe the behavior without letting it dictate his own. He understood that if you let disrespect provoke you, the other person controls the moment. But if you respond with clarity, you control the outcome. Transformation is not about proving your worth to the person who disrespected you, it is about proving your strength to yourself. The power of reframing a disrespectful moment lies in the way it shifts attention. Instead of focusing on the insult, you focus on the opportunity hidden inside it. The opportunity to highlight unfair behavior. The opportunity to reveal flaws in a system. The opportunity to educate, correct, or inspire a different response. The CEO recognized that the staff member's actions didn't just affect him, they reflected a pattern that likely affected others. By remaining composed, he allowed the staff member's behavior to stand out starkly against his own calmness. That contrast becomes a lesson for everyone watching. It becomes undeniable evidence of where the real issue lies. And once people see that truth, transformation begins, not through force but through clarity. Another aspect of transforming disrespect is understanding the difference between reaction and response. Reactions are emotional and immediate. Responses are thoughtful and intentional. A reaction can escalate a situation, a response can elevate it. The CEO's response was grounded in confidence, not volatility. He knew who he was and what he represented. When someone knows their identity deeply, disrespect cannot shake them, it only reveals the insecurity of the person delivering it. This understanding frees you from emotional traps. It gives you space to choose the response that serves the bigger purpose rather than the temporary emotion. Transformation happens when you refuse to mirror the negativity aimed at you. There is also an element of leadership embedded in this approach. Great leaders know that people learn more from example than instruction. If he had responded with anger, he might have satisfied the immediate desire to confront the injustice, but he would have lost the chance to create a lasting impact. By responding with strength wrapped in calmness, he set a standard for everyone witnessing the moment. People remember behavior like that. They talk about it later. They reflect on it. It challenges their assumptions and shifts their understanding. Disrespect, when met with dignity, becomes a catalyst for awareness. Awareness becomes the first step to change. And change becomes the foundation for transformation. Transforming disrespect also requires a long-term perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the CEO asked, "What can I do with this moment?" That shift in mindset creates possibilities where there were none. It turns a negative encounter into a platform for correction. It turns a personal slight into a public lesson. It turns hidden biases into visible issues that must be addressed. This is the mindset of someone who understands that every moment of unfair treatment carries the potential to spark progress, not just for themselves but for others who may walk the same path. What makes this approach powerful is not silence but intention. It is the deliberate choice to let your actions speak more clearly than your emotions. It is the understanding that you don't rise by pushing others down, you rise by standing taller than the situation. When disrespect is handled this way, it loses its ability to diminish you. Instead, it becomes a stepping stone, a moment that reveals your strength, challenges the environment, and encourages others to rethink their behavior. The CEO used the situation not to gain sympathy but to expose a truth and set a higher standard. That is the essence of turning disrespect into transformation, choosing purpose over impulse, growth over conflict, and impact over irritation. Leadership shows in how you react, not in how you're treated, because the world will always have moments that test patience, dignity, and emotional balance. Anyone can appear composed when everything is going right, but true leadership is revealed in the moments when someone is pushed, challenged, or disrespected. The black CEO in this story understood that his reaction to being removed from his VIP seat carried more weight than the injustice itself. Not because the injustice was small, but because his response would define the narrative, the outcome, and the impression left on everyone watching. People often think leadership is about titles or authority, but leadership is demonstrated long before anyone knows your position. It's shown in restraint, in clarity, in how you carry yourself in the face of unfair treatment. When someone attempts to diminish you, leadership is choosing not to shrink or lash out, but to stand in the strength of your identity. Moments of disrespect test whether someone leads from ego or from character. An ego-driven person reacts instantly, often emotionally, because their first instinct is to protect their pride. They want to correct the insult, assert their importance, or prove a point. But a character-driven leader takes a breath. They understand that not everything deserves a reaction. Not every act of ignorance deserves engagement. They choose to act, not react. The CEO's calm posture wasn't passivity, it was mastery. He recognized that emotional discipline is one of the greatest responsibilities of leadership. When others try to provoke you, your ability to stay grounded becomes your most powerful statement. His silence at that moment was not emptiness. It was filled with awareness, strategy, and self-respect. Leadership is also about understanding perspective. A leader sees beyond the moment, beyond the individual, beyond the insult. Instead of letting the staff member's behavior dictate his emotions, the CEO considered the bigger picture. He saw the power he held, not just as an executive, but as an example to everyone around him. People were watching. Staff members, passengers, onlookers, perhaps even those who had experienced similar treatment but never had the chance to respond. His reaction would signal to them what strength looks like. It would show them that you don't have to meet disrespect at the level it's delivered. You can rise above it without losing your voice. You can remain composed while making a powerful impact. Leadership heightens awareness of how one's actions ripple outward. A single moment becomes a lesson for many. Another aspect of leadership is the ability to stay aligned with your values even when you're treated unfairly. It's easy to believe in dignity, fairness, and respect when they're directed toward you. It's much harder when they're taken away from you. But leadership is about living your principles consistently. The CEO chose not to let the injustice pull him away from who he was. He understood that responding with anger might have satisfied the immediate emotion but would have undermined the values he stood for. Real leaders don't allow circumstances to dictate their character. They bring their character into the circumstance. They respond with intention, not impulse. They speak with purpose, not frustration. They show strength without needing to show superiority. Leadership also shows in the ability to turn a tense moment into a controlled one. When the CEO remained composed, he shifted the energy in the room. People became more aware, more alert, more reflective. They expected anger, and instead they saw strength. They expected confrontation, and instead they saw clarity. That reversal is powerful because it forces people to reconsider their assumptions. It makes them question the behavior they just witnessed. It highlights the wrong done without the victim having to shout about it. Leadership creates impact by demonstrating a standard of behavior that others may not have considered. It challenges others to rise to that standard. It teaches without lecturing and corrects without humiliating. A leader also understands timing. Sometimes the most powerful response is not the immediate one. Sometimes it's the moment you choose to reveal truth, identity, or consequence. The CEO knew he didn't need to prove who he was. He didn't need to list his accomplishments. He didn't need to defend his right to sit in that seat. His identity carried its own weight. Leadership means trusting that truth has power even when it is not spoken instantly. It means recognizing that dignity becomes undeniable when you refuse to let someone strip it away. When the truth eventually came out, when people realized who he was, the contrast between his calmness and their assumptions spoke louder than any argument could have. Leadership shows most clearly when someone has every reason to lose control but chooses not to. Those moments reveal emotional maturity, self-awareness, and inner stability. They separate those who are leaders by position from those who are leaders by nature. The CEO didn't need a title to demonstrate leadership. He needed a moment, and he used that moment wisely. His restraint, his awareness, his measured response all pointed to a deeper strength, one that inspires, teaches, and transforms. That is why leadership is never about how others treat you. It is about how you rise above the moment and reveal who you truly are. The hidden influence of humility and restraint often goes unnoticed in a world that celebrates loud victories, fast reactions, and visible displays of power. Yet humility, when paired with restraint, becomes one of the most transformative forces in human interaction. It is subtle, but it is not weak. It is quiet, but it is not passive. It moves not by pushing others down but by standing so firmly in one's truth that the need to prove anything disappears. The black CEO in this story understood this deeply. When he was removed from his VIP seat without justification, he had the authority, the resources, and the societal position to respond aggressively, to confront the staff, or to demand immediate correction. But he chose something different. He chose humility, not the kind that accepts mistreatment, but the kind that refuses to let ego dictate behavior. He chose restraint, not the kind that suppresses emotion, but the kind that channels emotion into intention. These choices did not weaken him, they strengthened the impact of everything that followed. Humility is often misunderstood as bending or shrinking, but true humility is rooted in confidence. It is the understanding that your worth is not defined by someone else's opinion, someone else's mistake, or someone else's inability to see you clearly. When the CEO chose not to assert himself in the moment, it wasn't because he doubted who he was. It was because he knew exactly who he was. He understood that the moment didn't require a loud declaration of status, it required the clarity of character. Humility operates from a place of inner strength. It does not need to dominate. It does not need to demand. It simply allows truth to stand on its own, knowing that truth is powerful enough without theatrics. Restraint, on the other hand, is the discipline to hold back when every impulse pushes you forward. It is the ability to pause before acting, to breathe before speaking, and to think before reacting. In moments of disrespect, restraint becomes a form of leadership because it shifts the energy of the situation. Instead of escalating tension, it grounds the environment. Instead of fueling conflict, it invites reflection. The CEO's restraint forced everyone watching to confront the reality of what had just happened. People noticed the staff member's behavior more sharply because it was not overshadowed by a heated reaction. His calmness didn't erase the injustice, it illuminated it. Humility and restraint together create a powerful contrast against the arrogance or bias of others. When someone behaves unfairly and the person they mistreat responds with grace, it reveals the imbalance of character instantly. It turns the spotlight on the person who acted improperly, not on the person who endured the behavior. This is where the hidden influence emerges. People begin to question the motives, the assumptions, and the actions of the wrongdoer without the victim needing to point them out. This quiet exposure is far more effective than confrontation because it allows others to come to their own realization. Change that grows from realization lasts longer than change that grows from pressure. Another aspect of humility is the ability to choose purpose over pride. Pride tries to win the moment. Purpose tries to win the bigger picture. Pride wants recognition. Purpose wants impact. When the CEO allowed the situation to unfold without asserting his authority, he was not losing control, he was gaining perspective. He recognized that this moment had the potential to teach more than it could hurt. He saw an opportunity to reveal a flaw, to challenge a bias, and to demonstrate a different kind of strength. This long-term thinking is a hallmark of humility, because humility does not rush. It observes. It waits. It chooses the moment where action will create change rather than noise. Humility also protects you from becoming what hurt you. When someone is treated unfairly, there is a natural urge to push back with equal force. But humility reminds you that reacting from hurt often reinforces the cycle rather than breaking it. The CEO could have embarrassed the staff member, belittled them, or demanded public correction. Instead, he let the truth reveal itself naturally. He allowed the staff to confront the weight of their own actions without adding humiliation to the lesson. This approach does not excuse the behavior, but it elevates the response. It prevents the situation from becoming a battle of egos and keeps it grounded in dignity. Restraint adds another layer of influence by creating space for consequences to unfold organically. When people act with bias or disrespect, and the person they underestimated responds with calm strength, the emotional gravity of the moment shifts. Witnesses feel it. The wrongdoer feels it. Even the environment feels it. Restraint does not delay justice, it amplifies it. It ensures that when the truth comes out, it lands harder because it is not diluted by emotional reaction. The CEO's restraint allowed the eventual realization of his identity and status to carry more impact. It exposed the depth of the staff member's assumption and bias without him having to speak a single harsh word. The hidden influence of humility and restraint is that they transform the narrative. They shift focus away from conflict and toward reflection. They reveal character without confrontation. They open doors that anger might close. And most importantly, they allow leadership to shine not through titles or authority, but through behavior. The CEO's response demonstrated that humility is not about stepping back, it is about standing tall without needing to step on anyone else. Restraint is not about silence, it is about choosing the moment where your voice will have the greatest effect. Together, they turned an unjust moment into a powerful lesson for everyone who witnessed it. How one person's calm response can shake an entire system becomes clear in moments where tension hangs in the air and everyone expects an explosion that never comes. Calmness, especially in the face of disrespect or prejudice, is not the absence of emotion, it is the mastery of it. And mastery carries a weight that systems built on bias or hierarchy are never prepared for. When the black CEO was removed from his VIP seat, the system around him expected a predictable reaction. They expected frustration, raised voices, confrontation, or at the very least, visible discomfort. That expectation wasn't accidental, it came from the stereotypes and assumptions society has taught people to expect. But when he remained calm, not passive but composed, he disrupted those expectations in a way far more powerful than anger ever could. Calmness in such a moment becomes a kind of shockwave. It throws people off balance because it reveals the weakness of the system that created the injustice. A calm response forces attention. In chaos, loudness blends together, but calm stands out. It becomes impossible to ignore. When the CEO stood there, quietly observing the situation, he created a mirror for everyone involved. The staff members saw their own behavior more clearly. The witnesses saw the contrast between how he was treated and how he chose to behave. Even those who might have dismissed the situation initially found themselves rethinking their stance. Calmness has a way of amplifying wrongs. It highlights them without embellishment. It strips them of excuses. That is why systems built on assumptions or bias rely so heavily on emotional reactions. They thrive when the targeted person breaks character, because it allows the system to shift focus away from the real issue. The CEO's calmness shifted the entire emotional landscape of the room. Suddenly, the power dynamic that the staff member believed they controlled started to crumble. Calmness is a kind of authority that doesn't announce itself, it simply exists, and others feel it. Authority built on position can be challenged, but authority built on presence is unshakable. Calm presence communicates self-confidence, dignity, and awareness, all without a single word. It shows that you understand your value and that no external force can destabilize it. This kind of response unsettles systems because they rely on control, and calmness breaks that control effortlessly. When someone reacts calmly to unfair treatment, it forces the system to confront its own flaws. People who would normally dismiss such incidents begin to notice the imbalance. They question procedures. They question decisions. They question the type of training or internal culture that allows such moments to happen. Calmness pushes introspection. It turns a personal moment into a public revelation. That is the real power. One person's composed response can open the eyes of many, and once a truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. Calmness makes it impossible for the system to hide behind chaos or excuses, because nothing obscures the core issue. Calm responses also challenge the assumptions that fuel systemic prejudice. Many people expect certain groups to react in certain ways based on stereotypes. When those expectations are broken, the system becomes exposed. The CEO's calmness contradicted every assumption the staff member had made about him. It forced them to realize that their actions weren't based on facts, protocol, or professionalism, they were based on bias. And once that realization takes place, it becomes a seed for change. Calmness does not erase the harm done, but it creates clarity around the cause of the harm, and clarity is the first step toward transformation. Another powerful aspect of calmness is the way it forces accountability. When a person stays calm, the burden of the moment shifts entirely onto the wrongdoer. They can no longer blame the victim's reaction or claim misunderstanding fueled by emotion. Their actions must stand alone. That isolation of responsibility is uncomfortable for people who hold systemic power, because it exposes them. The more calmly the CEO responded, the more stark the staff member's behavior appeared. The more dignified he remained, the more others questioned what had truly happened. Calmness, in this way, becomes a spotlight. It illuminates injustice in a way that loudness sometimes cannot. Calm responses also inspire the people who witness them. In the airport lounge, there were likely others who had experienced similar treatment, but lacked the platform or confidence to respond with grace. Seeing the CEO maintain control, dignity, and composure would give them a blueprint for their own moments of adversity. Systems do not change only through policy, they change through people who demonstrate new standards of behavior. Calmness becomes a model. It shows others what strength looks like when it chooses clarity over conflict. Calmness also holds strategic power. It allows a person to think, observe, and choose the exact moment when revealing the truth will have the most impact. When the CEO later revealed his identity, his calmness made the revelation far more powerful. If he had reacted angrily, the focus might have shifted to his behavior. But because he was calm, the moment became undeniable evidence of the staff member's prejudice. His calmness turned the truth into a shock. And that shock is what shakes systems. It forces conversation. It forces reflection. It forces change. Ultimately, Calmness is not about being quiet. It is about being in control of yourself so thoroughly that no injustice can force you out of your character. And when someone stands firmly in who they are, despite being wronged, they create a moment that resonates far beyond the incident. One person's calm response can shake a room, challenge a mindset, and disrupt a system that has operated without accountability for too long. That is the kind of calm that doesn't silence power, it becomes power.